Well, since you're all dying to know what I think about the new Picard show, I guess I'll tell you. We're 5 episodes in, halfway through the season, so just as I did with both seasons of Discovery, I'll pause and take stock of how the show's been so far, what's working for me, what's not working for me, where I think it needs to go from here. Let's do some quick episode-by-episode thoughts first. And, in case I need to say it, spoilers aplenty ahead. Remembrance. There's a delicate balance between fan service and setting up new stuff that's mostly pulled off. We get a Data cameo, opening shot aboard the Enterprise D, Picard's disastrous interview, which establishes what happened on Romulus, what happened on Mars, the fact that Picard left Starfleet. We meet Daj, who has some mysterious connection to Data. Picard visits his lockbox at the Starfleet archive. We see the Captain Picard Day banner. Picard looks at a painting that Data made that has Daj in it. It turns out Daj is an android, but she doesn't know it, and she's being hunted by mysterious agents, and they find her and blow her up. Picard goes to see Dr. Agnes Jurati at the Daystrom Institute, who is super bored since the Federation banned androids after the Mars attack. She tells Picard that Bruce Maddox, remember him, was working on a way to recreate Data, and also that any such android would have to be created as part of a pair, which means Daj has a twin out there somewhere. And then we meet the twin. Her name is Soji, and she's just showing up for work at a Romulan reclamation site that is actually a salvaged Borg cube. Lots of stuff happens. But it's almost all setup and exposition. Really interesting setup and exposition, but not a lot of forward movement in terms of the story at this point. Maps and legends. Picard and his Romulan housekeeper Laris, who used to work for the Tal Shiar, do some detective work and discover what happened to Daj may have been the work of the Zhat Vash, an even more super secret Romulan organization. They also figure out that Soji isn't on Earth, but they don't know exactly where she is. Picard gets a checkup from his old doctor from the Stargazer, who tells him he's in excellent health, but also there's this anomaly in his brain that might kill him soonish, maybe? Undaunted, Picard goes to Starfleet and talks to Admiral Clancy. He asks her to reinstate his commission and give him a ship so he can go look for Bruce Maddox and Soji, and Clancy is like, fuck you, because she's still sore over Picard resigning after the Mars attack and the aborted Romulan rescue, and she thinks he's a sad old man who doesn't understand how complicated the Romulan situation was, and he needs to just go home. Meanwhile, Soji's working at the reclaimed Borg cube, de-assimilating drones, and she meets Narek, a mysterious Romulan dude who has a sister who is working undercover as a human for Starfleet, and ooh, they're up to something. More setup, more exposition. The end is the beginning. Picard reconnects with Raffi, a former Starfleet officer who worked with him during the lead-up to the Romulan supernova. When Picard resigned from Starfleet, her career was kind of screwed too. And to add insult to injury, Picard never checked in to see how she was doing. Still, Picard tells her everything that's been going on, and she agrees to help him find a ship, to take him on a quest, to find Maddox and Soji. Meanwhile, on the Borg cube, Soji meets the director of the Borg Reclamation Project, and hey, look at that! It's Hugh! He's been impressed with how Soji is able to work with the ex-Borg, so he grants her request to interview a Romulan ex-Borg named Ramda, who is living on the cube. Soji talks to Ramda, who is a bit odd, and ends up declaring Soji to be the Destroyer. That can't be good. Oh, also, Narek, the Romulan with the mysterious mission, is Soji's boyfriend now. And Narek's sister is here, having shed her human disguise, and they have kind of a weird chemistry together. Like maybe Romulan culture doesn't have an incest taboo? Also, Picard meets Captain Rios of the starship La Sirena, and he seems like a cool guy with a troubled past. Picard likes him, and he accepts the mission, and Raffi is like, I found out that Bruce Maddox is on Freecloud, and I'm coming with you for very important secret reasons. And Dr. Jurati shows up too, and she's like, also, I'm coming along, because Commodore O of Starfleet Security came to ask me what was up with you visiting me the other day, and I told her the truth, but I didn't tell her that I'm coming with you, which I am, because I want to see that android. And Picard's like, cool, engage. More setup and exposition. The stuff aboard the Borg cube isn't really grabbing me yet. The scenes with Soji, Hugh, and Ramda were the best stuff from that plotline so far, but even that was mostly just teases and setups for stuff that's going to happen later. Absolute candor. Picard and the crew of La Sirena make a stop at Vashti to pick up Elnor, a Romulan warrior who Picard befriended 14 years ago when he was overseeing relocation of Romulan refugees to Vashti before the Romulan supernova. After the attack on Mars, Picard left, never to return, and Elnor's been kind of bummed about that. Elnor has been raised by the Qowat Milat, an order of Romulan warrior nuns who live according to the way of absolute candor, meaning they don't filter their thoughts before they talk. The Romulans still living on Vashti aren't too happy to see Picard, since they now blame him for taking advantage of them in a moment of crisis and trying to weaken and divide them. Before they can kill Picard, Elnor arrives and saves Picard by decapitating one of the Romulans. Elnor pledges himself to Picard's cause. Picard apologizes for breaking faith with the Romulans all those years ago. Then they beam back to La Sirena, and Picard's like, Elnor, dude, from now on, don't decapitate anyone until I give you the go-ahead. I mean, until I tell you it's okay. Okay? Meanwhile, the Romulan incest twins are still doing creepy secret stuff on the Borg cube, and I'm still not that interested. Then, back in orbit above Vashti, a local warlord in an old Romulan ship shows up to attack La Sirena, but Picard and his ragtag crew are saved at the last minute by another ship that flies in and drives off the Romulan ship. The new ship is seriously damaged, so they beam the pilot aboard, and hey, look who it is! It's 7 of 9! I'm liking the flashbacks that show us what was going on 14 years ago, and in particular, I love Picard's Tom Wolfe outfit. Very stylish. Stardust City Rag. Oh, hey, the prologue for this one sure is emotionally scarring, huh? For all you Star Trek Voyager fans who were hoping 7 of 9 wouldn't be the only cast member from that series to show up on Picard, I've got some good news and some bad news. Here's Icheb. Make some room in the fridge. It turns out that these days, 7 is one of the Fenris Rangers, a group of vigilantes attempting to enforce some kind of law and order in star systems that have fallen into chaos following the collapse of the neutral zone in the wake of the Romulan supernova. Boy, that messed up all kinds of stuff, didn't it? 7 tags along to Free Cloud, where they learn that Bruce Maddox is being held by someone called Bjayzl, who has the best name ever, and is also the boss of an organization that kills Borg and strips them for parts. They're the ones who are dissecting poor Icheb in the first scene. Picard and company hatch a plot, go in undercover with 7 as their prisoner, and offer to trade her to Bjayzl in exchange for Maddox, who's currently waiting to be handed over to the Tal Shiar. Picard disguises himself as a French cartoon character, Captain Rios dons the garb of a 1970s street pimp, and Elnor goes down just as himself because he doesn't really get the whole pretending to be another person thing. There's a big fight. 7 almost kills Bjayzl, but Picard talks her out of it, and they beam back to La Sirena with Maddox, who is seriously injured. Meanwhile, Raffi visits her son. This is the secret reason she wanted to visit Free Cloud, who isn't real happy to see her. She was a shitty mom, and he appreciates her apology, but he's not ready to forgive and forget. The Fenris Rangers have sent a ship to pick up 7, and before she leaves, she and Picard have the best scene of the whole series so far, where she asks Picard if he got his humanity back after he was assimilated by the Borg. And Picard says, yes. And 7 says, all of it? And Picard says, no. And then 7 beams back down to Free Cloud and embarks on a rip-roaring rampage of revenge against Bjayzl and her people. Back aboard La Sirena, Maddox manages to spill a little bit more exposition to Picard, including the fact that Soji is aboard the reclaimed Borg cube before Picard walks out, and Dr. Jurati tearfully murders Maddox, explaining that she wishes she didn't know what she knows. Now we're cooking! Maybe? Can we be cooking now? Overall thoughts: the good, Patrick Stewart and Picard, the top draw of the series, turns out to be the best thing on the show. Kudos to Stewart and the writers for finding a way to make Picard wounded and brooding while still maintaining continuity with the character that we've seen before. This Picard is older, He's tired, he's guilty of both losing faith and breaking faith, and this series finds him rallying in his twilight years to try and atone for both of those sins. We see Picard standing up, speaking out, putting his ass on the line to represent what he believes to be the values of the Federation, but we also see that he himself, in his own way, has fallen short of those values. He not only resigned from Starfleet, he abandoned the Romulan refugees he'd promised to help, and he abandoned his friends like Raffi in favor of retreating to his family estate and, as he says at one point, waiting to die. Seeing Picard having to confront the consequences of his choices, of his failures, has been by far the most interesting part of the series so far. The best scenes, other than the aforementioned scene with Seven, which is far and away the best thing the show's done so far, have been about Picard facing up to someone he has let down or pissed off. When Admiral Clancy is reading him the riot act, laying into him over the sheer fucking hubris of walking back into Starfleet and asking for a ship to take on his private mission, we naturally side with Jean-Luc. But the way Clancy describes the harsh political realities of the situation, she kinda has a point. I still don't take her side of the argument, but she has a reasonable position, and I totally get why she'd be pissed at Picard. Ditto for Raffi, who reminds Picard that her life fell apart after he resigned from Starfleet, and he just wasn't there for her. That's strong stuff, and Stewart plays it just right, showing us a Picard who acknowledges his failures and is determined to make up for them by helping first Dahj and then Soji. Raffi. I like her character. I like the reveal about her son and her past as a neglectful mother in episode 5, and I like how that parallels Picard's treatment of her. The fact that she let down her son and hopes he will forgive her helps to put her decision to help Picard, despite his past treatment of her, into perspective. And in terms of acting, Michelle Hurd has been killing it. Captain Rios and his mysterious, tragic past, which seems to involve the death of a former captain. I also like the gimmick that prior to meeting Picard and company, Rios' ship was apparently totally crewed by emergency holograms, all sharing his own physical appearance, but all speaking with different accents. It's cute, but not too cute. And the way the EMH was used in episode 5, popping on automatically when it detected a psychiatric emergency for Dr. Jurati as she was preparing to murder Maddox, was very nice. The new status quo, with Starfleet and the Federation going through a bit of a moral crisis, failing to live up to its highest ideals, is something I very much appreciate. If Star Trek is going to continue to wear its politics on its sleeve, and if its political commentary is going to continue to be relevant to the world in which it is being produced, and I think both of those things are essential to Star Trek, then the world of Star Trek has to reflect the world we're living in right now. And given what a mess the world is right now, and how shamefully and utterly the United States is failing the rest of the world, especially the least fortunate, the immigrants and refugees who look to my country for help and sanctuary, I can't think of a better starting point for a Star Trek show than a Federation that is guilty of the same thing, bowing to fear and ignorance, pulling back its resources, turning its back on those who need it the most because they belong to the wrong group of people. I know some Star Trek fans lament the loss of the pure, good utopian Federation. They say that the Federation should be a society that we can all aspire to. But to them, I say, first of all, it is still a society we can aspire to in many ways. It still, so far as we can tell on Picard, is a society without poverty, without war, without institutionalized prejudice and equality, on the inside at least. And second of all, if one of the goals of Star Trek is to encourage us to improve our own world, surely there's nothing wrong with providing that encouragement in a way that is more challenging and that more directly illustrates some of the most pressing problems that we need to fix at the moment. I love Star Trek. I love it when Star Trek gets political, but the truth is, Star Trek has done a whole lot of preaching at us over the last 5 decades or so, and that preaching sounds real good to those of us sat in the choir nodding along in agreement. But Star Trek has rarely challenged us. It has often told us that discrimination is bad, that racism and xenophobia are bad, but it rarely points a finger at us and says, we are guilty of these sins right now, and we need to do something about it. It's not someone else's problem, it's our problem, and we have to fix it. Picard seems to be positioning itself to make that challenge, and I am 100% here for it. Related to the new status quo for the series, I've liked how the returning characters other than Picard have been brought along. So far, we've only seen Hugh and Seven. Well, okay, and Icheb. But I think Seven and Hugh are in interesting places that make sense given where we last saw them. Hugh as the director of a project dedicated to de-assimilating people and helping ex-Borg makes perfect sense for him, and it's so nice to see Jonathan Del Arco again in that role. And I'm pleased to see that, according to some of the promotional stills that have been released for episode 6, he has at least one scene with Picard coming up. And 7 of 9... I mean, I don't necessarily think spin-offs about old characters is the way forward for Star Trek at this point, but I would happily make an exception if they decided to produce a 7 of 9 series. She is in such an interesting place when we meet her in Picard. A place we might not have anticipated, but a place that feels right for her. It's way more interesting than anything the writers of Voyager could have come up with for her, all due respect, though that's not totally fair. Star Trek writers have historically not shown much imagination when it comes to moving the lives of the characters forward. Even in alternate futures, pretty much everyone winds up doing what they were doing before, just slightly different. 7 probably would have wound up joining Starfleet or working on some research project, blah, 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 boring. Instead, she's this badass space cowboy out for vengeance against evil Borg harvesters. I mean, how cool is this? And given 7's history on Voyager as the outsider, the one who would always question the Starfleet way, the one who was constantly butting heads with authority, it's a development that fits her character just right. And needless to say, Jeri Ryan is fantastic, and I hope we haven't seen the last of her. The writers have been good about dropping a hook at the end of every episode, and I've not yet finished watching an episode where I wasn't eager to see the next one. So that's good. The bad. The pacing of the show is a problem, as it has been in both seasons of Star Trek Discovery as well. Narratively, Picard feels quite heavily backloaded. This first half was a lot of setting up, which means the burden now rests with the second half to start paying off these setups in a satisfying way. This would probably be less of a problem for me at this point if Picard was released Netflix style, all the episodes at once, so I could watch the whole show at my convenience, but it's being released the old-fashioned way, 1 episode per week, which is fine, nothing inherently wrong with that release schedule, but it gets a little grating when every episode turns out to be largely exposition, setup, and tease, with precious little meaningful forward movement in the story. Also, at this point, halfway through the season, I couldn't care less about anything that's happening on the Borg cube with Soji, Narek, and his inappropriately sexual sister, or any of that. The Soji, Narek, Borg stuff suffers the most from the structure and pacing of the series because nearly all of those scenes are teases for something big that's going to happen at some point. There's a revelation coming or an end game to be initiated. We have no idea what it is, but it's some kind of a threat to Soji, or she's a threat in some form or something. Whatever it is, it hasn't happened yet, and hopefully when it happens, it will redeem what's come before and make everything feel worth the wait. As it stands, I just kind of politely watch the Soji Narek stuff while waiting for the show to cut back to the characters I actually care about. And by the way, I thought episode 5 was the best episode so far, and in that episode, there are 0 scenes set aboard the Borg cube. Coincidence? Perhaps. I know a lot of Star Trek fans have had problems with the fact that the language in the show is a lot coarser than it was in TNG, and the level of violence is a little higher. I don't have a problem with either of those things. The fact that the characters swear that the Admiral said fuck in one episode doesn't bother me at all. It's nothing new. It's not even new for Star Trek. Discovery already broke the fuck barrier a couple of years ago, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest. And yeah, the violence in episode 5 in particular was extremely graphic and upsetting, but I think that was the point. What happens to Icheb is horrific, but after we see that, can we really argue with what Seven does to Bjayzl when she returns to Freecloud after leaving La Sirena? I mean, sure, okay, you can argue with it, you can always argue with it, but you get it too, right? We understand the grief, the pain that is driving Seven to kill Bjayzl because we felt a little of it too. Anyway, that's really it as far as stuff in the show I don't like. As has been the case with Discovery, especially Season 2 of Discovery, the good with Picard outweighs the bad. It's far from perfect, it has its problems, it's not what I would call great television, but I would call it very good television for the most part. And most importantly, it has kept my interest since the first episode. Watching it has been a pleasure, never felt like a chore, never felt like homework. Anita Sarkeesian said something on the most recent Feminist Frequency Picard Review podcast, which I'm a guest on, FYI, that echoes my own feelings. She said, despite whatever problem she has with it, she's still just delighted that this show even exists. And so am I. I was delighted when it was announced, I was delighted when I saw the trailers, and I'm delighted every Thursday when I sit down on my couch, click the CBS All Access icon on my TV, and watch the latest episode. It's not a perfect show, but it's a good show. I'm so happy to have it, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here in the second half of the season. That's it for the review, folks. Before I go, a few announcements. First, as many of you know, because I mention it at the end of almost every Star Trek video I do, I co-host a Star Trek-themed comedy podcast called The Ensign's Log, which you can find through the links in the video description. We just completed our second season, and to celebrate, myself and Jason Harding, who co-hosts the show with me and also, created it and produces it and does almost all of the work to, make it, we'll be doing a live stream on this channel this weekend. The Ensign's Log Live Season 2 Q&A will take place this Sunday, March 1st, beginning at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific, whatever time that is, wherever you are. We hope you can join us. We'll talk about the show, talk about Star Trek, answer your questions. It was a hell of a lot of fun last time, and we're really looking forward to doing it again. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as I mentioned already, I'm the guest on the new episode of the Feminist Frequency Picard Review podcast. I was absolutely thrilled and honored to join Anita and Ebony to talk about episodes 4 and 5 of Picard. I love all the Feminist Frequency podcasts, and being a Star Trek fan, I especially enjoy their Star Trek reviews, which they've done previously for Discovery and are now doing for Picard. Anita and Ebony are awesome. So much fun to work with, and I had the best time with them recording this show. It's also linked in the description, so check it out. As always, don't forget patreon.com/Steve Shives to support this channel. I couldn't do this without my patrons. For a pledge of any amount from $1 a month on up, you can vote in the monthly poll to choose an upcoming topic for a Trek Actually video. The poll to decide April's topic is up right now, so if you're a patron and you haven't voted yet, go vote. And if you want to vote but you're not a patron, consider becoming one. Next month's topic has already been chosen. It's going to be, what do conservatives actually like about Star Trek? I'm looking forward to that video. Hopefully you are too. That's all for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.